Hi guys, and today I've got for you the Audi E-Tron GT. Now you will know this for one or both of two reasons. A, because this was Tony Stark's last car that he drove in Avengers Endgame, and also B, because it's based on the same platform as the Porsche Taycan. Although this one is a little bit longer and a little bit narrower than that car, and I do have to say probably I'm inspired by the movie, but I do much prefer the sleeker, more angular, sharper looks of this car. I feel it's a bit more futuristic than the Taycan. Anyway, they were jointly developed, and it's a J9 platform, which in the case of the Audi, because it's a Quattro, there's a motor at the front, a motor at the rear, because it has to be all-wheel drive. Plus, of course, it gets a 2-speed automatic transmission, which is also located in the rear. I think with the Taycan, you can also get a rear-wheel drive version only. Now, the Audis are powered by a 93 kilowatt-hour battery, and in the RS version, which is not this one, that's the high-performance model, you get 590 brake horsepower, and in boost mode, that's 637 brake horsepower. That'll give you a 0 to 62 miles per hour acceleration time of 3.1 seconds, and the top speed I suspect limited to 155 miles per hour. So what about this one? Well, this is no slouch either. With 469 brake horsepower, do 0 to 62 miles per hour in 4.5 seconds. And if you put it in launch mode, which is when you unleash the rest of the horsepower, taking it up to 523 horsepower, you can do that in 4.1 seconds. And the top speed is about 152 miles per hour. While it's doing that, it's making a noise. They've got a sort of artificial enhanced noise. In fact, in dynamic mode, it's enhanced. It's kind of like a sci-fi sound. It's sort of like the Millennium Falcon going into hyperdrive. What about the range, you're asking? Well, the RS version will do 280 miles as quoted, and this one is quoted as 295. I'll talk about the real world when I get to the driving bit. Next thing you're going to ask is about the price. Wow, this thing is over £105,000, and with the options on this particular car, so that's the 21-inch alloys, the leather, extended leather upholstery, and also the locking rear def, amongst other stuff that it's got, we're talking over £108,000. So you're looking at £110,000. That's before you get into the RS model, which of course is more expensive. So, as usual, we're going to take a look at the boot, the rear space, the interior before, of course, taking it for a drive. Before we do any of that, make sure that you're subscribing to youtube.com/browncarguy. Make sure you follow me on browncarguy.com, and of course on all the social media channels, just search for my hashtag, which of course is #browncarguy. And if you enjoy my content, you can support it on patreon.com/browncarguy. Cool, let's get into this. Check it out, check out this arrangement back here. Look at the lighting, look how that goes in and it comes out. It's all very dramatic, it's very movie-like, isn't it? E-Tron GT, this one. Now, this has a spoiler which adjusts automatically, so that's what this panel here is. That's the screen is actually, the window is actually up to here, and then there's a kind of black panel there. Underneath here is a button. It's powered on this car. And in here, you've actually got 405 litres of boot space, so that's not bad. And underneath here, there's a little cavity, a little bit of space to put stuff, maybe cables, but also wouldn't be big enough for the full set of cables because that's what this bag contains, so that's pretty massive. You do have 60-40 split folding seats, so you can have more room there. There's a power supply. You can also get a little netted pocket here, but there's a little pocket there, and then a net that runs across. There is actually another 80 litres of luggage space available in this car. I think I should show you that first before getting into it. Let's go to the front. So in order to show you the frunk, the front trunk or the front boot, actually I have to access it from a button that's here in the door, like that. So that opens the front. Before I get there, actually, I need to show you this panel because there's one on this side and there's one on the other side. So what's underneath them? Of course, that's where you plug in the charger. But this is like the regular charger, and on the other side, you've got the high-speed charger. So you've got two options. So people wondering why there's a compartment on both sides, it's just because it gives you two options. So moving to the boot here we go. Under this huge expansive bonnet here is, in fact, an 80-litre compartment right there. Now, in addition to this deep boot with the triangle, you've got two additional compartments. You've got one here, which is for the tool kit, tire repair kit, and all of that sort of stuff. And then a similar thing on this side as well, again with tools and stuff in it. So that's quite handy. Another place to put stuff. You can also access your windscreen washer fluid and stuff like that from here. Now it's time to get into the rear of the car and see what it's like for passenger space. There we go, this side. Okay, so here we are inside, and as you can see, it's got a low roof. This driver's seat, which is quite a substantial seat. I mean, look at that. That's a proper bucket seat, a balti seat as we call it. And I get in here, so that driving seat is set for my driving position. So from that point of view, it's not too bad actually. I've got loads of room for my knees down here. The feet are a little bit tight, but they're okay. And there is just about enough room here for the bottom of the legs as well. Now, what I will say is that the roof is a bit low. It does slope down, so for my head it's a bit tight. I mean, I'm literally my head, even though it's scooped out here because of this panoramic glass that we have here on the roof here. Because of that, it's scooped out, but even so, the top of my head is touching the top of the roof here, the panel here. So that's a little bit tight. Also, I must say that I feel like I'm sitting a bit upright, and I don't see that there's any way of adjusting it. I can't find any adjustment, so I believe that is the actual seating position. So it feels a little bit upright to me. And this is quite imposing, and because that headrest, because that whole thing is built into one, even though the glass area is letting a lot of light in, I can't see as much ahead of me, although there's a big gap here, as I normally would sitting behind here. So that's a little bit, so if you like suffer from claustrophobia and stuff like that, you might just want to check that out before using this. So over here you've got two cup holders, an armrest. I don't think that's an access point to the rear, no, that's just a catch for that bit. There are, of course, Isofix child seat anchor points. It's quite scooped out in the way that it's done. So these seats are definitely designed for two individuals. I think it'll be very uncomfortable to have a third person in here. Also, it's quite interesting, if you can see from there, the way that it's scooped out. I mean, don't forget, this has got a front motor and a rear motor. Technically it doesn't need to have a drive shaft down the middle, but you can see how that's been scooped out, maybe because maybe the batteries are going around it and they've scooped out some extra room here for the feet. Maybe that's how that works. So over here you have a console here with two AC vents. You can actually adjust the temperature from here, and you've got heated rear seats as well, so that's quite good. You got a little hook here, a handle. Love the design of the door handle. It's very Lamborghini-esque, you know, but then of course Audi does own Lamborghini, so that wouldn't be out of place in Lamborghini. And then you've got Alcantara suede trim on here, and then Bang & Olufsen sound system as well. So pretty nice. That's the rear. What's the front like? Let's find out. If I can get out. I think it locked itself. Okay, and it is quite a low slung car, so getting in and out is a bit like getting in and out of a supercar, as you'll see when I get into the front. Here we go. So we're inside this car, and as I said, it's not just the door handle that reminds you that it's supercar-esque, because also the seating position is very low slung. You get quite low into the car. And similarly, if you look at the way that the car is configured, although it's maybe a little disappointing when you look at the futuristic exterior, it's all very Audi-like in here. They've avoided the temptation to go for a big tablet screen, as a lot of people do when they have electric cars. This one's got the regular two screens. Over here it has the normal Audi view thing, so you can change it into a couple of configurations. And then with this button you can roll through the trip meter, so it shows you the time, how the range that's left. So in this case, 117 mile range left. It's got half charge, if you like, 50% charge at the moment. It arrived with about 95% charge, and in that time I've done 92.9 miles in it. And over here it shows you the consumption that it's doing, and here's the battery, and then that just shows you ready and stuff like that. You can also see when it's regen charging, which you can operate from these pedals. It normally has a high regen, but it doesn't do the one pedal thing. We'll talk about that on the go, but you can configure it to maximize that. In here you've got this nice bit of carbon here. I like the way this is scooped out. It's all sort of facing you. Over here it's soft touch. This is piano black E-Tron, nice little design there, carbon pack. Over here you've got the AC. This screen is pretty much as you would expect it to be. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. The only thing is obviously you've got in the car bit And then you've got obviously the Audi Drive Select, which you can also access from this button. You've got efficiency, which actually reduces the top speed and I think curtails the climate control and stuff like that. When I go from efficiency into comfort, I lose about 4 miles of range immediately. Dynamic, I lose a bit more. And in individual, you can configure how you want, as typically you can with an Audi when you press that button. Drive, I've got in balance. You've got efficient, balance, and dynamic. Suspension, I've got in comfortable. You've got comfortable, dynamic. And then the sound profile, there's 3 profiles: subdued, balance, and dynamic. I'm keeping that in dynamic because I quite like it. So that's how I've got that configured. There you've got the air conditioning, 2 vents over here, the normal buttons over here. You've got a camera button that immediately shows you the 360-degree camera. Now this is a good thing, because one of the things with this car is you find the rear visibility is a little bit tight, because that rear window, because it's so steeply sloped and the back comes up so far, it's kind of pillar box. So the rear visibility is a bit limited, although when you look over your shoulder it's not too bad because of the big glass roof, and the C-pillar is thick, but it's not so thick that it hides too much stuff. But anyway, you've got the camera, which also comes up when you select reverse. You select reverse, you select gears with this little kind of, I don't know, like a tablet, little lozenge kind of thing, and you push it forward and that will come up. And you heard that sound, and that's kind of definitely meant to alert pedestrians that you are on the move. With electric cars, that's always a little bit of a problem. Traction control, park assist, you've got a little pocket, little compartment there. You've got your volume control, which is a touch actually. You can just touch it like that. MMI system, but there's no need for anything there. There's 2 cup holders plus this. Now what is this? Now look at the options quickly. That's the smoker's package. That's £60 for that. You know what? Best just quit smoking, I think. This thing also has the sports seats, as we've talked about, these big seats. Sports Seats Pro in perforated black fine Napa leather with black honeycomb stitching. The color, by the way, is Daytona Grey Metallic. So that's what it's got on there. Air quality package as well, that's £250. A garage door opener is £250 and stuff like that. Over here you've got a little compartment. In here you've got a wireless charger. You have to put your phone up against there, and you've got the Audi adapter cable in there as well. So that's all quite good. The flat bottom steering wheel and the paddles, as I've mentioned, do something other than you would normally expect them to do. The only thing I was talking about is the seating position. It's taken me a while to get comfortable in these big chairs, despite that they are of course fully powered and they've got supporting things, and the bolster here will come forward as well. But because it's low slung, because I'm long legged and short torsoed and kind of weird shaped, I've struggled to get comfortable in this car. But it's just, so I'm just about getting comfortable in it. But one thing I realize, it's quite a low slung car. It's not an SUV. So that's all well and good. I think we've pretty much covered everything. So the next thing to do, take it for a drive. So the first thing that you notice about this car, apart from getting in its low slang, is when you put it into drive, you get that low bassy thrum immediately. Boom. You know, it's not. I suppose it's like the beginning of a movie. It's like if you're in a sci-fi movie and they've just cut to the bit where the crew are aboard a starship, and there's always like a background hum to that starship. That's essentially what we've got here. That's the sound that we're kind of getting. But anyway. And it's there constantly. It's quite pleasant, I've got to say, I quite like it. So let's do this in 3 sort of segments, and the first part we'll just drive around in town for a little bit, because at the end of the day it is an electric car, and it's worth talking about the size of the car. It is quite long and it is quite wide. And I'll tell you what, where I am in northwest London, there are quite a few lanes with width restrictions. I would not go anywhere near them in this car. And it's not so much the width, which you can kind of judge, because it's pretty easy to judge, because you can see most of the bonnet and stuff. So you can place the front of the car quite well, in fact. But it's just a concern over those wheels, you know, the 21-inch wheels that this thing has got, because that's the bit you can't see. Although, you know, having that camera really does help, because at any point you can just, you know, hit that button, and then immediately it shows you exactly where the car is, where it's positioned. So that would kind of help, but yeah, I suppose it'd still be quite tight and difficult. So aside from that, around town, and also with the pedestrians, the noise you find actually that really does help, because people do notice the car as it's coming along or as it's rolling along. And as with previous electric cars, you know, I've noticed that to be a little bit of a hazard. But in this one, I think that noise is fairly obvious, you know, and people are aware of it. So that's certainly a good point. Plus, it's nice to have a bit of noise. You know, I like to hear something. Overall, the maneuverability and agility of the thing has not been a problem. The automatic braking thing I find is quite paranoid. So like even reversing into my spot at home because there's overhanging branches behind me, it tends to brake by itself, even though like there's a good amount of distance still left, but it will decide, nope, that's it, I'm not going any further. So, you know, so that's always a little bit of a thing. Other than that, it's not a problem. Again, visibility to the rear, as I've said, is a bit of an issue, but you know, otherwise it's not too much of a problem. The ride around town is very smooth. You know, it's not been an issue. One thing I have noticed over speed bumps and over paved bits, and you know, when you're going up a ramp or something like that, is you do get a little bit of sideways lateral motion on the suspension. And I don't know why that is, but also you still do get that little bit of quite rigid sensation at the lower part of it, which is something that, you know, I'm beginning to think is perhaps a little endemic of electric cars, because you do find that, you know, because the batteries are in that floor, that you have that extra level of stiffness. But having said that, it's not like it's rough or anything like that. It's fairly compliant and it's not too much of an issue. So no biggie really. What about the image that it has in town? I mean, so far it's getting quite a lot of respect, you know, a few glances. But it hasn't been the head turner that I expected it to be, because I think it's a really good looking car personally. But I wonder if just here in northwest London, maybe a little bit of an Audi overload. Although having said that, the RS6 that I had, I mean, that did prove to be quite a head turner. I don't know if it was just the, you know, the sort of grey colour that it had, the very bright grey colour that it has, the matte sort of matte effect kind of colour that it has. But this one I don't think has had that much of an impact, apart from certain knowing looks where people have gone, ah, okay, yeah, that's the E-Tron GT. But overall though, it's still an impressive car, and it certainly gets a bit of respect on the roads, you know, if that's what you're after. So in that sense, I think it does work, you know, as a city car. So far so good. Let's go a bit further out of town. Okay then, so more interesting roads ahead. Let's go into dynamic mode. Okay, I mean, basically that just makes the performance more electric, if you can say that, and I think it changes the suspension settings as well. The sound I already had on dynamic anyway, because I preferred it that way, so that's where it still is. Definitely not four-wheel steering, you can't feel that at all. I didn't see the rear wheels move as well, so this is a normal one. Now, when you're on a little road like this, now this is a nice tight little road, and the temptation is to, oh, holy moly, you just push through the throttle. It's interesting with the brakes. There's no sense that the brakes are doing anything unusual, although we know that they are because they're using regen initially. But oh my God, the acceleration on this thing, the moment that it sort of goes to like a little button thing. You know, it's a very, very subtle thing. I mean, I don't think it's like, you know, you won't feel it, but it's a slight hesitation, and then suddenly the car is like, woof, you know. And in dynamic mode, I'm not sure. I think with launch control, I'm not going to use launch control, but I think you're getting a. Oh my God! It's it's the instant shove, you know, and you know, you don't really feel the transmission doing anything, although it's supposed to have. Maybe that's the two-speed transmission that actually made that difference. I don't know, but oh my God, it's relentless. The acceleration is absolutely relentless. And it grips, it holds on, it's absolutely planted. The only thing is, like I was going to say before I was interrupted by the shock of the acceleration, is that on a road like that, is the wideness of the car and the narrowness of the lanes is slightly disconcerting. So this is not a car that you can hurl around tiny little B roads with, you know, complete abandon, because you have to be aware of the girth of the car. Oh my God, it really sort of pins you back. It's weird because it's like, you know, other cars accelerate, like petrol cars will accelerate as quickly, but like the RS6 I mentioned earlier. But the fact that there is a complete relentlessness, the linear acceleration, you know, it doesn't let up. You know, like with a gear change or an automatic, or if you're changing gear, there's a slight let up. There's no let up, you know, there's like, oh, off you go, and that's it, and you're just going, you know, until it decides it's going to run out of juice, which is, you know, doesn't seem like it wants to. Of course, when you tend to do that, you tend to use up the range quite a bit. So the range is always a little bit optimistic in the display, and it is in, like with all of these electric cars. So whatever it tells you is your range is not necessarily your range. So you need to minus 10 to 15% off that at least, you know, and then it depends on how you're driving. So for example, just doing that, I think I've lost about, you know, I would say 8 or 9 miles of range. Similarly, like the other day when I accelerated onto a motorway on-ramp, so, you know, from a lower speed up to 70 miles an hour, I immediately lost 9 miles on the range. You know, straight away you could see it's like, oh, where did that go? It just went, you know. So that's where you have to be a little bit circumspect about the range that's displayed and how you're driving and how far you think you're going to get with the car. But other than that, I mean, there is a little bit of recouping going on through the regen, and like I said, you've used the paddle to get extra regen. But the one thing that it doesn't do, which I kind of miss, and I don't understand why they're doing it, well, actually maybe I do, I'll come to that in a minute, is there is no one pedal drive, or that I can find anyway. So it just behaves like a normal car. So even with the full regen active, you know, it still behaves like a normal car. So, you know, you still have to use the brake to stop. It maybe slows down a little bit more in the full regen when you lift off, but it's not substantially, you know. So that's one of the things I miss, because I quite like that one pedal thing that you get with electric cars. With this one, you don't really get that. And I was going to say, why have they done that? I was going to speculate as to why have they done that. And I think it's to do with the fact, and I did say this a few years ago when I did the first E-Tron, the SUV, and I said the interesting thing about that car was that they tried to make it very car-like, apart from the fact that they had cameras instead of mirrors. Thank God they've got mirrors on this thing. I really didn't get on with those cameras, if I'm being absolutely honest about it. They just didn't work for me. But these mirrors are much, much better. But one thing I did find with that car was that it just drove like a normal car. And I think, again, with this one, despite that futuristic noise, I mean, it is a noise, so it's not like complete silence, so you do feel that. Despite the futuristic noise and obviously the technology in this car, fundamentally, it feels like any ordinary Audi to drive. It feels like, well, maybe not ordinary, but it feels like any other Audi to drive, any petrol Audi to drive, quite frankly. There isn't a huge amount of difference here, apart from, obviously, you know, when you do this. And the thing is like, whoa, what the heck? You know, where did that sudden acceleration come from? Now, I've come to this little road where I often bring cars, which is an extremely bumpy road, very, very bumpy, and you can see that the car is very, very settled. You know, I mean, it's with a big car, and I've just been talking about how stiff it feels and stuff like that. You do get a little bit of a vibration, and from various aspects of the car, and you do get a bit of road noise as well. But considering how I know this road to be really bad, and you can probably see a bit of movement now, but overall, it's still keeping it fairly well damped and smothered, and not uncomfortable at all. You can feel the movement, but it's not, you know, it's not pummeling you around or anything like that. So actually, very impressive. Heavy car though, of course. So, you know, it is, you know, the bulk probably helps a little bit there. Anyway, so far so good. Let's find a little bit of a motorway stretch and see if I've got enough range, and see how we get on there. Okay, so we're building up speed now to join the motorway. I have driven it on the motorway previously, and as you can imagine, very smooth, very sublime, easy to cruise at speed, very quiet, of course. Active cruise control, so you can pretty much set the speed and stuff like that for this stalk down here, and that will sort everything else out for you. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it will do exactly as you expect it to do. If there was a bit more guarantee regarding the range, and again, I've lost a few miles just accelerating onto the motorway just now, just a couple of miles, then this is definitely a GT. This is a cruiser. This is a car. And I think that this is actually where it excels, and possibly where it's meant to excel a little bit more than, say, the Taycan, for example. I guess the Taycan is meant to be more of a sporty saloon. This one, you can see Tony Stark, you know, going from the Avengers headquarters to his secret hideout in the woods or wherever, you know, etc., etc., in this car. And I think that this is where it kind of suits. It suits really well doing this sort of stuff. It's very quiet. It's very. I think the aerodynamics has been sorted. It's interesting because of the wide rear shoulders that it's got, the way that the body scoops in and over the wheel arches and then over the rear shoulder line. And it's almost like you're thinking, well, you know, that's cutting into the space of the cabin. Although it's not really an issue in the back of the cab, in the back of the car, but maybe you're thinking, oh, maybe that's to do with how the airflow is around the back of the car, or around the side of the car rather. So it's all very quiet, very smooth, and absolutely fine. So there you go, E-Tron GT. What do I think of it now that I've driven it? Because I've liked it since the moment I saw Tony Stark pull up in it, as I've already mentioned. And I still think that it is a fantastic looking car. I don't think it's replacing the RS6 stroke RS7 in my affections as the Audi to have. But I think that as an electric car, it's probably right up there amongst the best that I've driven. And I think that, you know, one of the things that's unique about this car, in one sense, I suppose, is that it's not unique. They've tried to keep it, you know, as familiar as possible to people that have driven petrol cars. So there's no surprises here, no shocks. You just get in the car, you just drive it as you normally would. There's nothing really to think about except from when and how and where am I going to charge it. That's the only thing. Other than that, straightforward Audi. There you go, there's my review of the Audi E-Tron GT. Please let me know what you think of the E-Tron GT. Would love to hear your thoughts, especially on something as new and unusual as this. And also I'd like to hear what you think about the styling of the car. Take one, interior rear Audi E-Tron. Have you noticed how all the bubbles on the roof are red and orange? It's so weird. It's like little rainbows are happening.
Oh yeah.
Can you see them? In the droplets. It's like little rainbows are happening.
That's so cool.
That's really weird. Wow, okay. Yes, anyway. Getting on with the car. Ready? Still recording, yeah? Alright. 3, 2, 1. There's a little spider here. The spider literally just hanging right there. Okay, let's do it again. Still recording, yeah? 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here we are. Thank you to my top tier patron and sponsor Jay Williams over Air Technic. Check out their shop for brakes, exhaust, body kits, and of course suspension. Plus, thanks to Muhammad Ali Ahmed and Tom Conway Gordon, who are both tier 4 patrons, and of course all of these guys for also subscribing to my Patreon account and contributing so much towards helping me to continue creating this content. Join them over at patreon.com/browncarguy, and of course make sure that you are subscribing, liking, and sharing this channel. Hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any of my videos, and also check out browncarguy.com and follow me on all social media channels. Just search for my hashtag, which of course is #BrownCarGuy.